Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Powerful Man Show. I am your host, Doug Holt, with my co-host, Tim, the Powerful Man Matthews. What's going on, brother?
Yeah, I'm doing very well. And do you know, I'm tired, in fact. I'm doing well and I'm tired. Got back from Leeds about 3 hours ago, I think. Great trip. Very mixed, kind of empty, full feeling. Really pleased to have been there for my family. I think last week, in fact, after we finished recording, I think I drove up there. We got there about 11 p.m. last Wednesday evening. And then, wanted to be back here for this today. So, but yeah, I'm good. How are you?
Awesome, man. You and I had a great conversation before that. I still laugh at Tim, the Powerful Man Matthews. And for those that are newer to the podcast, or maybe even last year or new, they don't know how that all started, but it still entertains me. So I enjoy it.
Yeah. What's so funny about it? Clearly you don't see it.
I do see it, man. You're one of the people in the world that I really respect, and you've really, you put your money where your mouth is, so to speak. And, that's one of the definitions when we define what is a powerful man. It's a question we get asked often by the guys or, through the podcast. And, one of the areas is just being authentic, continuously growing yourself. And those are things that you hold true. Those are your attributes. We can give you all kinds of different titles and names, but this one's fitting. And it started off as a little bit of a jest and joke, but it's kind of rings true.
I love it when some of the men in the movement call me. I mean, Amelia calls me many different names, so it's some nice, sometimes not so. So it's nice.
Call you the powerful man in the bedroom.
Yeah, I'm sure she does in her head.
Yeah, I'm sure she does as well. She just can't speak.
Oh yeah. I've got to have my hand over her mouth.
Now we're gonna get lots of emails.
Yeah. So there's something I wanted to bring to the table today. So, as you know, Doug, one of our core values at the Powerful Man within our organization, like within the team, is calling out the gaps and the greatness that you see in yourselves and in others, right? Well, we have some other core values. We have 4, just to give the listeners some context here. We've got, as the first one, we drive it home. So that's all about going the extra mile. If you see something that is a miss or a gap, drive it home. If you're leading one of the men, you drive it home. Just drive it home, right? Second one is we live a fuck yes life. So, we live the message before we sell the message, quote unquote, before we serve the message. We live it. Mm-hmm. The third one is that we, like I said, call out the gaps and the greatness that we see in ourselves and in others. And the fourth one is that we have fun, we enjoy the journey, have fun, and laugh at ourselves along the way. So the one that sometimes the team tends to struggle with the most, they do well with them all, but the one that tends to be a bit of a gap from time to time is number 3, calling out the gaps and the greatness, right? And we're on the team meeting this week, weren't we? And just so you guys know, every quarter, we came up with the core values together as a team. And at the end of every quarter, everybody rates everybody on the team as to how they are living the core values, right? And the ratings are visible for everybody on the team to see, so we can have honest and open conversations. So anyway, I was speaking with one of the team last week, and we had to let somebody go recently who was on the team because it just wasn't the right place for that person. And an amazing response was received by one of the people on the team who really took it on board for him to take responsibility because he didn't call out the gaps that he saw with this team member, right? And he felt really bad about this. He said, I just wonder if I would have mentioned to him that I saw these gaps, he might have changed them sooner. Now, the guy was only on the team for 4 weeks, and we're very quick to be able to spot when somebody isn't a cultural fit. The culture is so strong that honestly it just kind of stands out and everybody else on the team sees it. It's pretty obvious, which is great. So anyway, on the team meeting this Monday, as you know, we asked the team, hey, why do you hold back at times from calling out the gaps you see in others? Because, sometimes a team aren't always as direct and honest as they could be. And what came out about this was the fact that they didn't want to hurt each other's feelings. They wanted to, be nice, quote unquote. But the trouble with this is if we're a team and we are all committed to achieving a goal together, right? Then if anyone on the team doesn't call out the gap that he sees in somebody else, then really he's self-sacrificing his own progress. Because as a team, we all achieve together, right? And as I dived into this with some of the people on the team, what became apparent was there was also other areas in their life that they weren't necessarily calling out the gaps that they saw, which were tiny little leaks energetically, right? Great thing about the team is they're super coachable. So once they spot something, they often bridge it, right? So the reason why I want to bring this up is because we spoke about in past episodes about how often patterns that you see in business will reflect in the relationship. So, for example, if a listener is listening to this and it's resonating and they're avoiding having conversations with people on their team, they're avoiding calling out the gaps that they see or even recognizing the greatness, but mainly calling out the gaps that they see because they don't want to hurt somebody's feelings or come across as being a bit of a jerk or whatever it is, then that will 100% show up in their relationship as well because they'll be self-sacrificing and also self-sabotaging their own needs and desires, right? And then if you're doing that in the business and you're taking slow progress into the relationship, you're going to have resentment, you're going to struggle. It's just a vicious cycle that you can get into. So if someone's resonating with this, Doug, I'd love to open up a conversation about it. Why do you think people do this and what can they do to break this cycle and really start calling out those gaps?
Yeah, first of all, I love the core values that our team has developed together. But I think when you look at calling out the gaps, I think what happens there is people fear that they're going to get rejected, right? The other person's not going to like them for pointing out what's going on. And oftentimes it's just the opposite, right? Obviously with our organization, the Powerful Manism movement, we have a pretty big team that run this, and everybody is coachable and everybody wants to be part of a coaching organization that's really changing the lives of men and their families, their businesses, and their communities, which puts us in a really, advantageous position. Yet still, people are people, right? And if I call out to you and I point out something that I'm seeing in you, Tim, as an example, as something that is a gap, I could have the worry that you're going to get upset at me for pointing out your quote unquote faults. And therefore, if you get upset at me, you're going to be angry. You're not going to like me. We're not going to be friends, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Right. And I think it's that fear of rejection, being rejected, that kicks in. We've talked about in previous podcasts about brain chemistry, right? Serotonin, oxytocin, et cetera. And I think for a lot of people, it's just this, it's pre-programmed in us to want to be accepted by people. Right, we're safer when we're accepted, or we think we are, and I think it's that natural response to wanting to be liked, wanting to be accepted, wanting people to enjoy our company, right? That prevents a lot of people from stepping in and leading, right? Because as a leader, you get to call out the gaps. As a leader, you have to take the risk of people not accepting you because you're doing the right thing. You're leading.
Do you know what? As you say this, the thing that's screaming out in my mind is nice guy.
Oh, it's 100% nice guy.
It's a trap of the nice guy. And if you think about your relationship, right, intimate relationship.
Yeah.
If you were to take these traits into your intimate relationship, the lack of leadership, the lack of calling out the gaps and wanting to be liked, this is where you end up doing the dishes and sacrificing your own desires. Instead of going to work out in the morning, you want to find ways to please your wife. You want to find ways to please everybody else except for yourself. And inevitably you come across as being needy because you are needy, because you're often drained, right? You're running on empty because you're not taking care of yourself. So there's a real link here. And I think the opportunity that a lot of people have is to reframe it, right? That, look, calling out the gaps is a way that the people on the team, on our team, do it. We can share that in a moment. And I think the same applies to your intimate relationship as well. I had one of the team reach out to me yesterday, actually, which I loved. Because I've been asking them, look, call out my gaps, call out my gaps. I can't see my own blind spots, call out my gaps. And one of the guys said, hey, listen, I've noticed you've been a couple of minutes, I think 1 or 2 minutes late for a few meetings lately. And I know that's below your standard. And I know that you wouldn't let me have this pattern in my life if it is a pattern. Maybe it's not. Maybe there's something going on that I don't know about. But, you wouldn't let me settle in this way for anything less than I deserve. So I'm just pointing this out for you. And if there's any help that I can give you with this, please just let me know. And I'm here to support you. Right? Which I thought was awesome. Obviously, I replied, look, no help needed. There were reasons why, but also I'm not going to make excuses. Cool. Listen, got it. Awesome. And I get to do the work to look at, okay, what's the root cause of that? Why am I a minute or two late? Right? But it's the same. That curious frame that he took is the same curious frame you can take in your relationship, right? You've mentioned it on previous podcasts. Hey, we agreed on this particular thing. Can you help me understand why it's not happening? Now, I thought we'd agreed that boom, 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 boom. And again, just going back to our team, for us, when we are very clear on what everybody's individual goals are, what their personal goals are for the year, why it's important for them to achieve it, why it's an absolute must, like why now, and also what the goals are for the movement in the men that we're helping, then we're able to have these conversations where we're calling out the gaps from a place of really coming at it from the best interest of the team and of the movement. It's the same thing in the relationship, right? Once you're clear on expectations, if you will, then it puts you in a position of saying, hey, I thought we agreed to this. It's not happening. Help me understand, what can I do here? What help do you need from me? Again, back to your point earlier, Doug, there's so much power in doing this because when you roll over, if you're avoiding the conversations, be it in business with your team members, and you are tolerating performance from people on your team that is below what you desire and maybe even need, then you're going to take that level of settling into your relationship, and that isn't attractive. It's the opposite of leadership. It's abdicating your leadership, in fact.
Yeah, I agree 100%. So let's take a step back here. Because in my mind, where this starts at home and in the office or, in the movement we call a powerful man, is first setting standards, agreeing upon the standards at which you're willing to play, right? Because you can't call out gaps unless you know the playing field, so to speak, right? And going there. Otherwise, you're just saying, hey, this is my opinion of what's going on. This doesn't feel good to me. This doesn't show up good, whatever you might want to say. So you got to set those standards first and foremost. And those standards can also be talked about, which we talk about a lot with the guys, especially as they first go through the activation method, is creating boundaries. This is acceptable. This is not. Sometimes we take it to extremes. If it's not a fuck yes, it's a fuck no, right? And we say that a lot. So sorry for guys that have kids in the cars, but that's exactly how we address it with the men. And sometimes as guys, we need it black and white. Right? If it's not a fuck yes, then it's a fuck no. Because a lot of men, we have, they're a nice guy syndrome. They fall into deer, which we've talked about before. They defend, explain, excuse, and react. Right? They need to cut the cord. Right? They need a dividing line right away. Otherwise, it'll just bleed in. They'll say yes to too much. So first, you got to set the standards. Set it for your business, but also set those standards and boundaries in your relationship. Is it okay for your wife to take off every weekend for a trip by herself? Is it okay for your wife to come home late drunk from the bars? Is it okay for you guys to sleep in separate bedrooms? Right? You got to set the standards by which you're willing to play. Now, this doesn't mean you become dictatorial at all, right? That we're just going to say, this is the way it is. And that's how it's going to be, right? There's some negotiation here. Like, for example, for you mentioned our core values, we get buy-in. The whole team came up with those. It wasn't just Tim and I sitting down and saying, this is what it's going to be. Now, we led this conversation, to be fair, right? But this is what the team came up with. Now, once that happens, then it's on everybody to identify those gaps. Now I can say, hey, we agreed on this. Can you help me understand why we're not doing it? Can you help me understand your point of view? Can you teach me your point of view of why this isn't happening? And that's when real leadership, to me, Tim, shows up, is when that ability to do so, despite the fact that you may get rejected, despite the fact that somebody may not like it. And what tends to happen in my experience, and Tim, I'd love to hear yours, although you and I talk about this a lot, what tends to happen is people's knee-jerk reaction is to get upset at you. Can happen. Actually, that's not true. It doesn't tend to happen, but it can happen. And they get upset at you. But once they sit in it for a second or days, they come to realize that they're not playing at their level and that you're just there helping them. And 100% of the guys I talk to when I say, who was the coach in your sporting career that you actually really benefited you the most? Was it the coach that always said, hey, good job, hey, fourth place, we still did good? Or was it the coach that barked at you, yelled at you, and pushed you to be better, to be the best athlete you could be? 100% of the guys say it's the coach that pushed them. Maybe he was a dick at the time, you thought, but at the end of the day, he was the guy who was getting the best out of you. And he's getting the best out of you because he cared, not because he was a jerk. He cared about you. And that's where this comes in handy. And our team realizes this, and your wife will realize this to some degree, right? Depending on your boundaries, that when you do this from an energetic space of love, the energetic space of standing up for what's right for the other person, that's when you win the paradigm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. If we were to call out the gaps and make it about us, right? We have a philosophy in The Powerful Man that you can apply to your relationship, apply to your family, that everybody wins, right? Mm-hmm. And what that means is the men win who come into our world and are in the movement. The movement wins as an individual thing. So it's profitable, it has cash flow, it can grow, it can help more men. The team wins. So they live a fuck yes life, quote unquote, right? They're part of something that means something for them. They're in a growth environment. They're operating, living up to their potential. And the world wins, right? The world wins by more amazing men going out into the world. So everybody wins. So if we're operating by that philosophy, then, and also we understand what each person's individual goals are, we're very clear on when somebody joins and they come onto the team. Okay, so what does that fuck yes life look like for you? Just like I would do with a man in the movement. Okay, cool. Now, roughly how much money does it take for you to actually live that life? Itemize it, get as accurate as you can. And then come out with a real clear figure. It might be 9,432 or 15,212. Then we back that up into how they can generate that amount of cash each month through the movement, right? Be it their compensation plan, be it the growth plan, whatever it is. So then when we're calling out the gaps and holding them accountable and supporting them, we're holding them to the standard that they told us they're committed to being at. We're holding them to the standard of that person they are, right? Because we see that in them. And it's the same thing in your business or even in the relationship, right? So like you were saying, 100%, you've got to get clear on those standards, expectations in the relationship. And you may want things that your partner may not want or vice versa, or you might be on the same page, whatever. But yeah, you've got to get clear on that first and then also agree upon how you are comfortable in holding each other accountable to that, right? Essentially calling out those gaps. A simple way is a curious frame, like we were just mentioning a minute ago. Hey, I'm kind of curious. We both said that having time in a weekend, just us away from the kids, was important for us both, and that you were going to take care of finding the babysitters. But for the past couple of weekends, that hasn't happened, and we've had the kids with us. I'm kind of curious, how come that's happened? Is there anything I can help you with? and can help you find some babysitters. Always assuming the best in the other person, right?
That's key.
And taking the curious frame, and it lowers the guard and opens the conversation. Now, if that happens a second time and a third time, well, that's kind of getting into a different conversation. But yeah, just take the curious frame and assume the best. But it's so important for you to not settle, right? For you to get clear on what it is you want, not just in your relationship, but also in business. And guys, you'd have to choose between your relationship or your business. A lot of guys often think they do. You don't. You can have both. They can both be thriving. Get clear on what that looks like for you and commit to it. Take a stand, because nobody's going to take a stand for you.
Yeah, no, it's true. You got to take a stand in here and now, right? In this moment, make your choice, right? The worst place to be is on the fence. It's the worst place to be. Pick a side and take that stand and draw that line and lead. And it's important to lead. So Tim, I love this conversation. What are a couple of things the guys can do right now today in this moment of insight?
I say this often, and I'm going to keep saying it. I want you to look at the parallels between the problems you're facing in business and how are they showing up in the relationship. Because, you're going to be able to hit a double whammy here, guys. Rather than thinking the issue with the employee and productivity going down, it taking 3 men to do one man's job has been separate to the problems in your relationship. First of all, I want you to look at the link between the two and see if there is one. I bet there is. I'd be surprised if there wasn't. So look at that, right? Second thing, I want you to get clear on what it is you actually want. And start small, start simple with a simple shift. Get clear on that, right? Third thing is sit down and talk to your partner about that. Get them on the same page. Get buy-in from your team, from your partner. Now, some of you may not be in a position to get buy-in from your partner. Maybe they're not interested. Cool. Go and get buy-in from your team. Start taking a stand for yourself and your business. Start creating boundaries there and practicing the curious frame and assuming the best there, because it will bleed over into your relationship. There will be tiny agreements that you'll make with your wife throughout the week that you'll then be able to start taking a stand for, and really start to take a stand for yourself, guys. Don't fall into the trap of being the deer. Don't be that guy. It's not going to work for you. That's not what she wants. It's not what you want. So take a stand.
Guys, you heard it here first. And guys, I'm going to encourage you, the guys in the alumni group go over to our private community and they call out the gaps within each other all the time. It's like having 100 mini coaches that got your back 24/7. It's absolutely amazing. For those of you that haven't been involved in one of our programs yet, what you can do is you can go over to the Facebook group. It's a free group we have. There's about 3,000 business owners that are in there, married business owners. Some are separated going through there, but they also have your gap. They're your back, and call out the gaps, right? And what I'm going to encourage you to do is make sure you're in that group, is speak up and make your declaration of what your standards are and allow yourself to be held accountable. And the difference, like Tim said, is, you need to be coachable, right? If you're not coachable, no one can help you, including yourself, right? The first person you need to be coachable to is you. And once you've been able to do that, then you want to turn over some accountability and coachability to someone who's professional who can help you out with that. So gentlemen, as always, take action in the moment of insight, and we'll see you next time on the Powerful Man Show.